The following program is being brought to you on the VoiceAmerica Health and Wellness Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive with Dr. Rebecca Risk. Do you ever feel that even though nothing seems seriously wrong and you pass all the medical tests, that you still feel that your health, pain, and fatigue are completely out of control? It doesn't have to be that way. Listen to the tips and suggestions given on our program today and take back control of your health. Now, here is Dr. Rebecca Risk.
Hi everybody, welcome to the show. Today we're talking with Henny Beaumont. She is an artist and portrait painter who lives in London, England. Today we're discussing her first book, Hole in the Heart, Bringing Up Beth. So Henny, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Can you tell us what inspired you to write this graphic novel?
As an artist, I'd always painted, but I'd never written a graphic novel before. And I suppose it was a combination of the experience of having my daughter and actually it was seeing a doctor talking about her work as she's a consultant, but she wrote comics as well. And I saw a talk she gave about her work as a doctor and her experience with patients, and it completely inspired me and made me think, I really want to describe my experience that I'd had with my daughter in a kind of graphic format.
Well, you know, it's a very emotional book. You know, I didn't think it would be quite that much, but when I started reading, I was like, wow, this is, you know, it seems like you didn't hold anything back. Which I think is very brave of you. And not a lot of people, I think, would want to share everything that you were thinking. And you know, and you definitely did, which I think is important. You know, because your daughter has Down syndrome, and you know, to share what you went through is probably going to help a lot of other people to be okay with how they're feeling with it, and then to overcome, because it has a beautiful ending as well.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that was basically the idea, was that there wasn't really, I felt there wasn't anything really out there that described my own difficulties in coming to terms with her diagnosis, because when I was pregnant I had no idea that she had Down syndrome, so it was a complete shock to me, and it took me quite a long time to get my head round the fact that she had Down syndrome, and there wasn't really anything. I felt that there was lots of sort of quite positive stuff about Down syndrome, which was great, but there wasn't anything that sort of described the process that I had gone through to get to the sort of more positive outcome in the end.
Well, you know, and some of the things that you're feeling and that you go through are, you know, probably not as politically correct as we would want it to have been, but I think it's also very real, because you have this, you know, you're expecting this healthy child, and then you know, the diagnosis was you know, as you said, it was a bit of a shock, and it does change the dynamic of everything, and that's something that you have to accept as well.
I mean, the thing is, I had no sense of having any kind of prejudice against Down syndrome or any other kind of disability when I was outside of that situation. But it was only when I had a child with Down syndrome that I sort of really felt, oh my God, I actually have prejudices against people with, I'm not in an active way, but it was as though, oh, you know, it's okay for other people, but it's not okay for me, which really sort of challenged my whole idea about what it sort of meant to be human and what it meant to have a disability. And I felt that only if I really looked at myself and my own preconceptions could I sort of expect other people to look at theirs. And that's why I really wanted it to be as honest as possible, because I thought, we all hold sort of ideas that we're not even aware of unless we're sort of faced with that sort of situation. So I suppose that's what you're referring to as the political uncorrectness of it, is
yes.
that, it's a journey. I mean, it's not where I end up. It shows that how, when I was initially confronted with it, I mean, it was partly my own ignorance as well. I hadn't, Down syndrome was completely off my radar. I had no idea really what it meant. I had no sense of what people could achieve with Down syndrome, or, it was something I hadn't even thought about at all. I didn't really know anyone who had Down syndrome. It was, I had some sort of kind of slightly antiquated notion of what it meant to have Downs, none of which was really true at all. So, yeah.
Well, you went through a process as well, it seemed, correct me if I'm wrong, where you were worried about, I guess, what other people were thinking, but that might have been a reflection of what you were thinking as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of anticipated, particularly when she was very little, and I was quite angry, because it was traumatic, her diagnosis, and I was sort of left shocked for a long time, and I think shocked and quite angry, really, because it was badly managed by the English health system. And when we were told, we were told awful things about her prognosis, that she, that we'd be. There's a bit in the book actually where I say where we'd be comforted to know that she was going to die before us, and that she wouldn't manage to read, all sorts of things which just not true. I mean, and I've really lost my train of thought.
That's all right. So when you were given the diagnosis, how did your husband react? Did he have the same thoughts as you did?
Well, yeah, really. I mean, the thing was, we were initially given a 50-50. I mean, it was at birth. So we'd had all the antenatal scans, the kind of usual antenatal scans. We'd had the nuchal fold test, and nothing had shown up. And she had a heart condition, quite a serious, AVSD, fairly serious heart condition as well, and none of that had shown up on the antenatal scan. So for him, it was a complete shock as well. And he had as much knowledge or as little knowledge about Down syndrome as I had. So we were very much in it together. He was shocked as well, but he was great. I mean, he was we sort of kind of came in and out of, one of us would be feeling more down, and the other would sort of step in and be strong and say would comfort the other one, and I'll manage. And he's always been sort of very strong about it. But he did have the same sort of feelings of shock, and this is not my life, of sort of wanting to reject the sense of having a child with Downs in the same way as I did initially.
Yeah, well, it's good that you were able to support each other. It sounds like you're kind of a tag team, letting each other go through what they needed to, and which is what, a strong relationship should be about. Now, you have 2 older children as well. How did they react?
Well, I guess they picked up a lot of how we initially react. Although, and I was quite, I think, with hindsight, I think I was a bit overwordy about my explanations with my eldest daughter, who was 6 at the time. Although she disagrees with me, she said she found it helpful, but I think I sort of was a bit insistent on kind of describing everything, because partly because I wanted her to be able to fend her for herself, if she was asked about what it meant, or if she was ever teased about her sister. I mean, in a way that actually never ever happened. No one really ever sort of commented to her about her sister, or in a negative way. But so there, I think it was slightly coloured by my reaction, but actually, they just really adored her when she was a little baby. She was so sweet and kind of fluffy, and she had this sort of sticky up hair, which was very sweet, and they just wanted to take it in turns really to hold her. So they sort of fought over her. But, it's through my prism of sort of gloom at the time, I when I drew the book, I sort of looked back at the photos of when she was a little baby, and you could see how much they adored her. But I was really worried that it was ruining their lives, basically, that I had presented them with a disabled sister, and it was a terrible tragedy. But for them, she was just like this absolutely gorgeous. And they both now, whenever I see a baby with Down syndrome, I have to take a photo from my older children because they absolutely love babies with Down syndrome. It reminds them of Betty when she was little, because she was just sort of floppy and sweet, and when you held her, she'd sort of just snuggle into you in such a sweet way. But I found that difficult to see it at the time, so I feel like I sort of missed out a bit on her being a baby, even though obviously I was present, I was there. But I think the way in which they adored her was the way in which I probably would have liked to have been able to at the time.
So you said earlier that you had some misconceptions about Down syndrome, and what were those, and where has it come from then? From there?
Well, it was our family GP actually who said she won't be able to read, that we'd be lucky if she could recognise the signs for men and women on toilets. It's a very odd thing anyway to pick out, but and then a lot of people who would say, sort of well-meaning things, but would say, I've got a 30-year-old cousin. This is when you're talking about to someone who's just had a baby, they'd say things, I've got a whatever, or older, I've got a cousin who's in his 50s and he's living in sheltered accommodation, and he, does some kind of menial work or something, in a way that they were trying to be being nice, but they would be saying it as though, this is the prognosis for your child. And I'd feel like kind of, you wouldn't say it to anyone else who had a small baby. You wouldn't project that far into the future of what they might possibly be able to do, and also try and present it as a great thing. And so initially, it was really complicated actually by the fact that she was very fragile as well. So she was very purple and very weak, and because she had holes in her heart and faulty valves. So I didn't know if she was going to survive. I mean, initially she was going to be operated on. It might have been a sort of an emergency operation, and we were just told to watch her, and if she went blue, we should rush to hospital. So the physical sort of stuff about her health, I didn't know whether she was going to make it. And but I found it very difficult to see her as a sort of person, as a small baby, and to imagine that she was going to be able to do anything. I remember thinking, what if she can't get through that stage where, little babies, they pick up things and you're worried about them choking. I was sort of thinking, will she ever have enough sense to be able to get beyond that stage even? So there was sort of combined with sort of the kind of gloomy outlook I've been told by my GP, and my own sort of difficulty in seeing her progressing, I don't know, I didn't think she was going to achieve very much at all, actually.
Yeah. We're gonna take a quick break. We're talking today with Henny Beaumont about her graphic novel Hole in the Heart, bringing up Beth. So we're gonna be back shortly. Tune in.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
The largest syndicated alternative health talk program has come to the Voice America Network. The Dr. Bob Martin Show is the program that will answer your health questions and help you to heal your own body of many different ailments. Each week, you'll hear the answers that Dr. Bob gives to his callers that help them to be their own doctor most of the time. We'll also discuss developments on the healthcare front and what you need to do to keep your body in top form. The Dr. Bob Martin Show airs Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Health and Wellness.
We are bombarded with information daily about happy life strategies, beauty products, and business success ideas. Are they truly going to make a change or just take the change out of your pocket? Tune in to Shelley's Show and Tell with host Shelley Hancock. Shelley will explore and recommend proven business ideas, as well as show you how to use the law of attraction to create health, happiness, and a prosperous business. Listen Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Voice America Health and Wellness.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today we're talking with Henny Beaumont. She's connecting with us from London, England today to discuss her graphic novel, Hole in the Heart, Bringing Up Beth. So, Henny, when Beth was born and you're dealing with the diagnosis of Down syndrome, which was a surprise to you, you also found out that she had, serious heart condition. How did that impact you, and what happened with that?
Oh, well, it was just a dreadful time, really. So she Down syndrome first, and then because she seemed quite weak, and I think the consultant who saw her suspected she had a hole in the heart. Then we had a scan at Great Ormond Street Hospital 4 days later, and they found she had 2 holes in the heart and an AVSD, so a faulty valve. And they said it would be possibly emergency operation, or she might be okay, but we didn't really know. They said she would definitely need an operation before she was 5, but they were hoping in terms of the size of her heart that she would be older, because obviously it would be easy to operate if she was a bit older. But it was very difficult to take anything in at that time because I was sort of reeling from shock. You've just given birth, and so you're sort of physically in not a brilliant state, and then the shock of the Down syndrome, and then on top of that, then being told that your daughter might die, that she has, I don't know they said it like that, but they just said the word heart failure, which to me sounded like she's going to die. But actually, if you look it up, when they say heart failure, it just means that the child might go blue and that you need to do something as a sort of an emergency, which also obviously sounds quite scary, but it's not quite as scary as someone saying that your child might have heart failure, if you see what I mean. But again, this is with hindsight, is that I think it really disturbed the sort of bonding process, because I think I just felt that, he was a child I was finding it difficult already to love, because I was so sort of taken, and well, not for 6, that's sort of an understatement, but I was shocked by her diagnosis, and then the sense that she might not survive, I think sort of made me really hold something back, that I think the sort of idea of the unbearable pain of losing a baby, I don't know, whether this is true or not, but it's sort of some sort of self-preservation that I don't think I really connected with her properly until after she'd had the operation, and she was in the all clear. That we were told that it might be a very complicated recovery because of having Down syndrome, that she might be in hospital for much longer than children would normally be. But actually, it was really quick. She's really strong, Beth, and she was sort of sitting up the next day, and then I think she was only in hospital for about 4 days in the end. This was after full open heart surgery, so it was kind of remarkable how quickly she did bounce back from it. And I think once that was out of the way, life became a bit easier. I think it became easier to think, okay, we've got Down, she's got Down syndrome. Things aren't going to change, and that we have to get our heads around this and get to know her and get to love her. I mean, I found it really difficult, but I and it took me a while, and I'm sort of going backwards and forwards. But once I had, then life became much easier.
So what do you think, you had to go through all this process, and you said it sounds like you were in a self-preservation to love her until after the surgery. But what do you think changed that for you?
Well, I think her getting better. I think what started to happen, she made quite slow progress in terms of talking and walking and those sorts of things. But I think once she did start to sort of communicate with us, and we began to be able to really see her personality, and I think it just took a long time sort of to get to know her, and that I sort of just fell in love with her, really. I mean, she's quite difficult not to love. I mean, I don't know, she's my daughter, but she's so delicious and so sweet and so, funny and naughty and, like my other kids. But, I think I suppose the sort of what I imagined was going to be just wasn't. And the sort of progress she made, I felt very pleased for her, and it's very endearing, someone achieving those. I feel like I'm being patronising towards her, but I just fell in love with her, basically, I suppose, what happened.
Yeah. That's really sweet. When you sent her to school, what happened there? I know you had some difficulty in primary school, and so what was going on?
Well, the school, it was a new school, and they hadn't had any children with disability, and inclusion in England, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but inclusion is just not very well supported, or wasn't in this particular primary school. It wasn't the special needs coordinator wasn't fully versed in what he should be doing with a child with Down syndrome. And there's a lot of material available. There's a great place, Sarah Duffin Centre from the Down Syndrome Association. There's lots of information available, and they could have made it a lot easier, I think, for us. And so there was a lot of sort of reactive education. So they would, rather than planning for behaviour, I think they would sort of put it back on us. So I got phone calls all the time saying, Beth has done this, Beth has done that, and rather than them sort of having a plan of action and knowing how they were going to manage her, it was sort of thrown back a lot at us a lot of the time, and it was difficult, I think.
When you sent her to secondary school, I know you had some debate about her going to a special school. What was going on in your head then?
Well, I wanted her to go to the same school as her sisters, which was a big comprehensive, which was local, and again, she would have been the first child to go there with Down syndrome, and there wasn't a big group of kids with special needs there. And also, one of the main things was that at primary school she had a learning support assistant. So she had one adult with her sort of all day, so someone in lessons sitting with her. And in a way, it prevented her from becoming as independent as I think she wanted to be, and it also was a bit it made her into sort of special in a kind of way that wasn't very helpful to her. So she would be a bit naughty and misbehave, but then if she had the sort of adult with her, then she I don't know, she got sort of special attention, I think. And the school that we sent her to, they have 10 kids in the class, but all the children have to manage. They don't have individual, although the children have, some of them have slightly more complex needs. They have to cope as a group together, and they have two teachers. And I think it was just a really good thing for her, having to manage on her own in a way that she hadn't at primary school. So although it's a school for kids with moderate learning difficulties, and it's a state school, so it's a local state school as well, it felt to me that she'd have more independence there than she would have done at the local comprehensive school that we could have sent her to. And I just think the size of the school, and both her sisters at the time were at that school, and they felt that she wouldn't cope. And I had to really take on board their opinions, because they would have been at school with her, and they knew the school. So, and they basically said, you'd be mad to send her here. So I had to really kind of go with that.
Well, it makes more sense to teach her to become independent and to allow her to explore that on her own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a point, you actually have 4 children, and Beth is your third. When you were pregnant with your son, were you worried about him having Down syndrome as well?
Well, I was no more likely. I mean, I was no more likely to have another child with Down syndrome. So Betty, for me to have her was a completely random occurrence, so it didn't make it more likely. But, having had something happen which was completely unexpected, I definitely was more worried. And but I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. I just didn't feel particularly concerned when I was pregnant. I sort of felt quite confident that he didn't have Down syndrome, but I didn't really. Yeah, I mean, I was worried. Being honest, I definitely was worried, but
that's okay. In the family dynamics, it seems that, near the end of the book that, Beth is just a part of the family, and it doesn't seem like, she's, needing anything extra aside from what she needs as a person. Do I have that right? Is she sort of, part of the family?
Oh, God, completely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's good mates with her little brother. They've always sort of played together, and with her with her big sister, she's kind of behaves more like a teenager, and it's difficult really to describe it, because it's just normal family life. So I can't really think of anything particular, but we all kind of muck about together and watch telly together, and we're all watching Planet Earth at the moment together. And she's just part of the family. Exactly.
Yeah. So when throughout her life, including when she was at the primary school, has she had any difficulty making friends?
Yeah, she has really. I mean, not so much at primary school. She did have friends at primary school. I think it's more difficult now because she's not quite at the stage to have the independence that she would like. So she can't. As far as she's concerned, she would like to be going to clubs, drinking beer, and going dancing at night. And she just actually wouldn't be very safe doing that. I mean, anyway, she's 15, so she wouldn't be allowed to do that, whatever. But she's quite naughty. She wants to be a naughty teenager, and she watches things on telly that give her ideas, and but she can't really just go and hang out with her friends in the way in which she wants to. So that is a bit problematic for her.
So what does that mean if she's 15? What's the difference between what she needs and what, say, her sisters needed at 15? Oh
God! Well, her sisters at 15 were very sort of. They're both quite academic and sort of work driven. So, I mean, they weren't actually. She Beth is much more of a kind of wayward teenager, or would like to be, than either of them were. They're both kind of sort of studious, hard-working girls, and she's sort of, her favourite film is that film Step Brothers with Dale and Brandon, these 40-year-old men, and they're really badly behaved, and she thinks it's completely hilarious, and she would really like to be like one of them, or identifies as them, as Dale and Brandon. So, yeah, she has different ideas from her big sisters.
Yeah. Have you ever had any moments where you were maybe concerned, I guess aside from when she was first born and you were going through the process of acceptance, but now that she's older, I mean, have you ever been concerned that because she's different, there might be different treatment for her in the world or anything like that?
In a sort of, do you mean in a kind of...
Yeah, prejudices, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I just generally, I mean, I always kind of was expecting someone to say something awful, and I was always kind of, once I got over the initial shock, and then I felt like a sort of protector and defender, that I was always sort of thinking someone was going to say something, and I was going to say, "What are you staring at?" or someone was going to say something awful, and it just never really happened. I don't know. I mean, I guess sometimes people speak to me rather than her, but then I just sort of encourage them. I encourage them to talk directly to her, in the conversation if I'm there with her. The school she's at is really nice now, and she goes to she goes to a place called Hackney Shed, which is a great theatre company where which is an inclusive theatre company. So she does acting, she does swim club, she goes to sort of she does a boat club on a Saturday. So she has friends at all these places, and most of them are inclusive, and I think probably things have changed in the way in which people think about Down syndrome, possibly. Or I think also I've become a bit more thick-skinned and a bit more forgiving. So if someone said something that was sort of a bit iffy, I think I would just explain to them. And I think quite often people say things just because of ignorance and not because they're being kind of mean or the prejudice is of a nature which is more of ignorance rather than sort of nasty, which we ever can encounter. And Beth, she's quite strong herself. She's quite, if people are unpleasant, she's having problems with a little boy at school at the moment, but she's very able to look after herself, and quite often the stories she tells, I find out that actually it's not just the little boy, she's also up to no good as well. So she can look after herself quite well. She can tell people, she's, particularly if her siblings are teasing her, she has quite a lot of practice in how to fend for herself through battling with her siblings, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds pretty normal for a 15-year-old, really.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back shortly. We're talking today with Henny Beaumont. She's the author of Hole in the Heart, Bringing Up Beth. And we'll be back shortly.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Frankly Speaking About Cancer is a program designed to empower survivors and their caregivers to deal with the social and emotional challenges of cancer. The show will invite physicians, researchers, nurses, social workers, patients, and caregivers to share their advice on how to live a better life with cancer. Join host Kim Tibaldo, President and CEO of the Cancer Support Community, Tuesday afternoons at 1 p.m. Pacific Time and 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Network.
What causes us to be sick? We're not talking about the actual illness or the scientific cause of illnesses. We're talking about your body and health. Listen for the healing whisper of return to peace. Each week, host Dr. Marianne Chase shows you how to listen to your heart to identify poor health, stress, and disease. You'll learn how to heal energetically and spiritually as well as physically. It's time to depend less on the drugs and more on the heart. The Healing Whisper airs live every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Health and Wellness.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today we're talking with Henny Beaumont. She's the author of Hole in the Heart, Bringing Up Beth, which is a graphic novel. So, Henny, you talked before the break, about comments people have said that are just more about ignorance. Do you find that some of the what they're saying is maybe where you were before you had a child with Down syndrome?
Yeah, I think that well, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a bit in my book that I talk about language about Down syndrome, and that people when they talk about Down syndrome, they say a Downs baby or a Downs person, and I'm sure I would have done that before I had Beth, but when Betty was little, and when I was still angry, if someone said a Downs person or a Downs baby, I'd find it really upsetting, and because I still don't particularly like it, and if you look at the Down Syndrome Association website, it explains it probably more clearly than I'm about to, but it because it feels like you mention the Down syndrome first, and as though the person with Down syndrome is a sort of separate person, as though they're alien, in a sense that actually that what matters is the fact that they're a person immediately, and the Down syndrome is just something additional. So I would always say a person with Down syndrome, or a child, or a baby with Down syndrome. And although it seems quite small, it really matters quite a lot to me. But I wouldn't feel angry with anyone for saying it now. And actually, I had a radio interview recently, too, in London, where the interviewer said a Downs person, and I managed to say in a very sort of nice way, actually, would you mind saying a person with Down syndrome? But 10 years ago, I probably would have gone, that's really not very nice, and so angry about it. But no.
It sounds like it's been a process for you as well to come to terms. Yeah. And with what you explained with where you were when she was born, you didn't understand anything about Down syndrome either. So, having that compassion that other people don't know, and they're in that place you were 15 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you find that there's a lot of support and resources for parents with children with Down syndrome?
Well, there are these great things she does after school, which is massively helpful. There is stuff there if you look for it. There is this place called the Sarah Duffin Centre, which is amazing. Research resource for education for children with Down syndrome, and they will recommend reading materials, and there's things like people with Downs are often much better visual learners, and those sorts of things are quite important to know and are very helpful. So we did Makaton with Betty before she learnt to speak, so having signing is a really helpful way for people with Downs to learn. We sought out information, and we were able to sort out. I don't really know how much support. I mean, actually, I met a woman last week who had a baby and who knew her baby had Down syndrome antenatally. And, it's quite unusual here for someone to progress with the pregnancy where they find out the baby has Down syndrome. And she said that she had never had anyone say anything unpleasant, and that, when she was pregnant, because it's quite common, the story of someone who's pregnant with a baby with Downs who wants to progress with the pregnancy, that they will be asked if they're sure, if they really want to keep the baby. And she said she felt things must have changed. She'd read my book and she felt things must have changed since Bethy was born, and she was getting good support. So, yeah, I think, I don't know how things will be affected with sort of austerity cuts and I don't get difficult, but with Brexit and money and disability allowances cut, I don't know. But at the moment, there is fairly good support.
So now with the reason why some people would want to terminate that pregnancy, would that be some of the unknown about Down syndrome, or
absolutely. I think there's a really negative narrative about Down syndrome, I think from health professionals, or there has been, and whether that changes or not, about I was given a leaflet when she was a tiny baby, which told me all the things that might go wrong about leukemia, about I can't even remember. I sort of slightly washed it out of my brain, but in the way in which you wouldn't dream of giving someone, any kind of info. We all know the kind of things that can also go wrong with any children, that you wouldn't say your child might get cancer, your child might get run over, your child might, to someone with a newborn baby, it would be unthinkable. And so I think the sort of the narrative around Downs as seeing it as a risk rather than a chance of having a baby with Down syndrome needs to be redressed, to sort of balance a bit.
Well, I think it's interesting the way that you just said that, the risk of having a baby with Down syndrome instead of the chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. And I know people who haven't been in your situation, although listening to your story, I think we can all understand where you are. But I know the misconceptions of, this child is going to be a burden, this child is going to be handicapped, and that's going to be too hard. Is that some of what people were thinking? Yeah,
I think so. I think it's also looking at what the child won't be able to do, rather than looking at what the child will be able to do, and being up to date with what kids with Downs children are achieving, and also how they feel about their own lives. I mean, I read something recently about 90% of people with Down syndrome are happy with their lives, and so sort of taking that into account about how people with Down syndrome think about their lives and their achievements and their progress and their fulfillment, and what are we measuring it against? Are we only are we valuing people for on just academic or intellectual grounds, or where are we saying people's lives are worth living? How are we, rather not where, but how are we judging people's lives to be worth living or not?
Yeah, it seems, if they aren't going to be, in a certain level, then, as you're saying, we're judging that their life isn't worth living, which I think is not really where it should be. Yeah, which you probably agree with. So any if there's any parents or anybody who's in a similar situation, whether it's a child with Down syndrome or any other disability, what advice would you give them?
Oh, God. I don't know. Depends what they were asking me. That's quite broad. I suppose just from my own story, I felt that my life was over, that it sounds melodramatic now. I thought my life was over, nothing would ever be the same again, but it's just nonsense. My family life has been really good, and Beth has not been a burden or any of the things that I thought she was going to be. That she has been a real addition to my family, and my kids all love her. I love her, and my husband loves her. So, if you decide to have children, they're all going to be a pain in the neck, and they're all going to give you problems in some way, and they're all going to give you huge joy as well. So I think, if you're making the decision to have children, then you've decided to have children, I suppose. And if you love your children, then it's rewarding, but it's also difficult as well, isn't it? Sorry, that sounds a bit dry.
Well, I think the way you're saying it makes sense. Is that if correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're trying to say is that a child with Down syndrome has the label of what the difficulty may be, whereas other children will also have difficulties, and in both situations will bring you the same amount of joy as well.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
Which is a good way to explain it, and I wonder if that had been explained to you, the Down syndrome, in a different way when you were going through your difficulty. If it might have been easier for you, if somebody said, this is what's going on, but we know what it is, and it's going to be no bigger challenge than any other child.
Yeah, I think it would have been really helpful if someone had said that to me, if that I'd had solved. I did sort of seek out. I found people who had older children and who did say that kind of thing to me, and I quite often said to people, when does it get better? And I do remember someone saying to me, once I started loving my child, then it got better. And I think that's really when it got better for me, is once I was able to love her, then it kind of didn't really matter. But it was difficult to get to that point.
Yeah, that acceptance. So with Beth's heart condition and with everything else, how is she doing now?
She is completely fine. She's at the moment out at a club with her, not a nightclub.
as she wants.
No, this is it's her boat club that she goes to, Le Burnham Boat Club, and they've gone on a outing. I can't actually remember where, but they go off. She gets picked up after school on a bus, and then they bring her back, which is completely brilliant, and she has an absolutely lovely time. So where is she now? That's where she's physically now. Emotionally now, she's I don't know. She's quite not. Every morning she tries to pack her iPad and headphones into her school bag, and every morning I have to say to her, "Have you got any contraband in your bag that you would like to admit to now?" And she says, "No, Mom, I haven't." And then we go through the same performance. She asked Dale from Step Brothers to check her bag for her, which is sort of like a Ken Barbie. So Dale looks in her bag and says, "Beth, I think you need to take your iPad out of your bag." So this is the game we play at the moment. So yes, that's where she is at the moment.
She sounds quite sweet and happy.
She's very happy, yeah. Yeah, and she's in love with Justin Bieber.
Oh, well, of course she is.
15-year-olds, funnily enough.
Yeah. She sounds like a 15-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
So if there's anybody listening who'd like to read your book, which I highly recommend, how can they find it?
Okay, you can find it on Amazon. It's published by Penn State Press, so it's on US Amazon. It's also on UK Amazon. It's just come out in Spain as well, and you should be able to order it through bookshops as well if it's not in your local. It was at Waterstones, but if it's not in that, I don't know the American bookshops. But and if you can't find it, go to Penn State Press. but Amazon, it is on Amazon, so you can get it there.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. I highly recommend this book to anyone, especially if you even just have a child going through, the process of raising your child or a child with a disability. I think this book will be very helpful with a lot of what you go through with that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so thank you. Today we were joined by Henny Beaumont. She's the author of Hole in the Heart, Bringing Up Beth, which is a beautiful graphic novel. Next week we're going to be joined by Jason Fung discussing his book, The Complete Guide to Fasting. So please tune in and join us then, and make sure to make today a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive. Please join Dr. Rebecca Risk again next Monday at noon Eastern Time and 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. We'll talk more next week.